Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening. I want to think good night as well is appropriate for some persons in terms of where they are viewing, from where they are viewing. And we are here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in the Caribbean. And I'm saying to you, welcome to our live stream specific to our agenda. And our agenda is one to inform, is one to help us to wake up to the realization as to where we are in the timeline of our national, economic, and social development agenda. And specific to where we are in terms of our own history and the development of our people. Once again, I recognize that through the notification, it says slow connection, and that we are unable to really apologize for. It's just the delivery of service from this side of the island, I suppose. I trust that you would have had a good day thus far, and that you would have had something very special to eat. And for those who were unable to get a meal, a proper meal, I am saying to you that, what do you say to some persons who may not be able to get a proper meal? It's just that possibly reaching out to neighbors, to friends, to relatives, and to see how best you can cope with a given situation. But do know that change is inevitable. Life is a constant change and nothing remains the same. Today we want to look at injustice. And injustice has this particular meaning, that is the quality that relates to unfairness, quality of certain things that happen that relate to unfairness or undeserved outcomes. And specific to our nation's history, our nation's political timeline, there are things that would have happened in our grandfather's time, grandmother's time, in our parents' time, and now. But there are some questions that were thrown at me, and I am thinking that I should share them with you, because we also have some meetings that we go out to in the various areas within this particular constituency, and later on we are going out into other areas in St. Vincent as we continue to inform, as we continue to dialogue with our citizens and friends of our citizens. So that particular quality that relates to unfairness or undeserved outcome, that thing that is called injustice, well, we know justice on one hand and now injustice on the other hand. Almost opposite, so to speak. And the NLM would want to ask these questions, that is, the National Liberation Movement of which I am a part. We will want to ask some questions for the next hour or so, so bear with us as we are going through these questions. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Be nice to John. Is it an injustice to deny scholarships to some of our students who qualify? And know for sure I wouldn't come here at or in this forum to say these things without first having had an interaction with persons who would have told me these issues, and they would have presented evidence to that effect. Evidence that sometimes you wonder. Welcome, 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 Ford and Childs and Mrs. Hodge, yes, welcome. So the first question is it an injustice to deny scholarships to some of our students who qualify for those scholarships. Must first qualify for a particular scholarship. So is it an injustice? Remember, we say injustice is what? Unfairness or undeserved outcome. Is it an injustice to deny scholarships to some of our students who qualify? Just so that the parents are punished because those parents did not support a particular party or particular view of the party, or may have taken a politician to court and would have won that particular politician, and very subtle, the particular politician may have said words to the effect that scholarships that were offered, let's say last year, were 6, but this year, all of a sudden, it changed their mind and say, we are offering 5 scholarships instead. Is that the way politicians should maneuver? And the thing about it is, there are some politicians who set themselves up and they say they are the ones who are giving the scholarships. One must wonder, therefore, if in truth and in fact, the particular politician places his hands in his pocket to grant those scholarships to those students. If it is so, that is quite interesting. So we must ask those questions because we're not stupid. You ever heard people say, girl, you're not stupid? You know, you're not stupid. In other words, you're not stupid. The student who would have passed X amount of subjects and who would have qualified for that scholarship naturally would start feeling away to know that she has qualified or he has qualified for a particular place, a placement at a university, and is awaiting a scholarship. And the thing about it is that the scholarship may have been promised. So they place their reliance on, because if last year you give 6, and this year having passed at whatever college you would have passed, you know that is 6 they're giving this year. All of a sudden, the 6 reduced to 5. And knowing that you were on the list to get that scholarship, the parent complained. The parent would have said that this is what has happened. And that parent traced the denial of the scholarship to their child or children to the fact that they would have been involved in a case. And the case, they win the particular representative. So one must sit and wonder, did the particular representative just change their mind all of a sudden and say, okay, we're not granting 6 scholarships, but rather 5? We welcome Gordon, Mr. Samuel Gordon and Dean Bascom to our platform this evening in terms of viewing. So is it up to me to deny a scholarship to some of our students who qualified, but when you deny the student, the point we're making here, you do that not because the child all of a sudden loses out on something else, but rather that you punish the parents. You're punishing the parents for having won you in court. And it wouldn't be punishing the parents, punish the child. The child or children would, the trajectory of the life of that child just boom, change altogether because the child could no longer go to university, because the parents didn't have it to send them, and eventually the child has to end up someplace. We are all Vincentians, well, most of us on this platform, and we must ask ourselves the question, if we were in that position of the parent, would we have just folded our hands and kept quiet? I don't think so. But I'm asking you, is it an injustice? Remember, we say an injustice is that particular quality that relates to unfairness or undeserved or will produce undeserved outcomes. Now I'm going to swing this way from scholarships. I am going now to some financial matters. We know that our national insurance scheme or national insurance services were designed or created in such a way that some of the services were catering to this one thing. Some of it were catering to this, and that is our pensions. So willingly we signed up because, you know, we have this corporate conscience. We signed up and we say, okay, X amount of dollars, we agree that the amount of money will be deducted from our salaries and so on, and the employer will pay another percentage. And they have all lists of working out how much percentage monies that will be coming out of our salaries and so on. But remember, it's not just Doris alone paying tax or Doris alone paying NIS when she was working, or Samuel or Barbara, but all of us working. And you have some other contributions from self-employed persons and so. Persons who would have been sailing. We have had complaints from persons who have been sailing and they come back, can't get a pension. But now I'm asking the question, when NIS monies that was saved or were kept on record for us pensioners, when those monies are used to finance a government's agenda, is that an injustice? Mrs. Hodge? Anybody? Is that an injustice? That is, it relates to, that particular quality relates to what? Unfairness, or it produces an undeserved outcome. Is that an injustice? We can remember we save up in money, you know, we work. It's like, you know, long ago I used to see persons coming back from the UK and they would build these huge houses. And I would say, wow, it had to be that boy to pick up money off the ground up there. Not until I went to the UK and worked, I realized the amount of cold weather you have had to withstand. And up and down hustling here and there. The conditions abroad are harsh, much more harsher than here in Simpkins. But you work for the money, and then eventually, my cousin Jana Woodley, welcome. You work for the money, and so what you do, you send it back home, and you decide that you're going to save. Yes? You are going to save your monies, and eventually, hopefully, you will get your pension. We would have seen this play out quite interestingly. And it took us a while, many of us who read newspapers, it took us a while to connect the dots. And all of this information could be found in Eyewitness News. They did an extensive analysis as to the statements that were made by government. And it looks that the statements that were made by government were promises that they claimed they were going to fix this, build that, build the other. And all of a sudden, in Parliament, of all places, some of this information came out in the wash, so to speak. And then you're asking yourself the question, hang on a minute, NIS monies, were they saved? Were they kept on record for pensioners? And if they were kept on record, were they used to finance a government's agenda? Share this live. I want us to start a conversation, a serious one, and ask ourselves the question, is this an injustice? Remember, we say injustice relates to what? Unfairness and undeserved outcome. Vincentians, do we deserve, pensioners, do we deserve, if that was so, do we deserve to be treated like second class or third class or fourth class citizens because we would have worked for the money and we would have paid into the pension pot, so to speak, and next thing you see, a whole heap of stuff happening in the newspaper and you're wondering, is it really so? Is it so? Ask yourself the question, seriously. Is it an injustice to use pensioners' money to build a hotel, invest in a hotel, invest in a fishing boat, or invest in some, you name it, invest in anything, a blocks plant or anything like that, $2 million to institutional investors? Is it, you take out pensioners' money without pensioners' knowledge, without their knowledge. Is that an injustice? And then you withhold monies. You say, sorry, we're going to change the policy in midstream because we would have squandered or appeared to have squandered the money. When I say we, those who are responsible for making those decisions. We're asking the question. Mel, good afternoon. You have to ask the question. Is this an injustice? Or did we give the right to those who are administering our investment, the investment portfolio within the particular institution? Did we hand up? Yes, first two comments, we are dealing, first comments are, yes, we are dealing with injustice. So we say, yes, Mrs. Sarge, is it an injustice to use pensioners' money to build a hotel or invest otherwise, to the withholding of those monies when the time comes is supposed to be paid, or you return return it, the money that you actually save up, they save it for you now, so they dish it back out to you on a weekly basis or bi-weekly or howsoever. And the interesting thing, Mrs. Sarge and others, is this. I've heard complaints from pensioners who have to stand up in lines to make ends meet. They have to go back to work. They wanted to come home to sit down and plant some chuchura and dig up the backyard and chudle seeds and so on, so you're able to have a backyard garden. But you can't do that because light bill to pay, water bill to pay, rent to pay, a whole heap of things to pay, and they were expecting to receive their pensions. But all the pension cut out, just so. Can't get that because an actuarial review was done, and well, from time to time you have actuarial reviews that are done, and those actuarial reviews would say, listen, if you continue to dip, and it would have said so through their reports and so on, if you continue to dip your fingers in the money this way, guess what is going to happen? None ain't go left. And at a certain point in time, those who put their monies into that pension pot, none ain't go left. But recently, you would have seen and heard of some news that says a particular hotel in the news where the investment into that hotel, some of those monies were used from our national insurance scheme or national insurance fund, and now that hotel was to be sold. So is it, the response is that it would seem that, all right, I'm going to make noise. So guess what we're going to happen? We're going to sell the hotel and we are going to put monies back into the pot. But what would have happened if nobody made any sort of quarrel or question the motive or question anything else specific to the pensions here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Or is it that the pension fund, those who administer or manage or control the pension fund, is given a mandate to invest howsoever they can without our knowledge? Is it that is not an injustice, but is rather the way in which things are done, and as citizens we must hold our hands and take it? Is it an injustice? You tell me. You tell me. Tell us. And just me. Tell us. But it is sad to see some of our nationals who are old. They reach pension age and they still have to be running and trying to make two ends meet when they could have been receiving a pension. I don't know. You see, you have chartered accountants, you have forensic audits being done, you have persons who came here from abroad who sat us down from the World Bank, from the IMF, from the United Nations, and they sat us down and they are the ones that are telling us, if you all continue like this, this is what is going to happen. But what happened to our ministers, our representatives that are responsible for the general oversight of the particular pension scheme? What happened to those ministers? Or what is it? What drives the particular administration to figure that, hey, they could do as they please, or it appears so? Or they could just issue to the board a particular directive, because nothing happens without the knowledge of the top. Nothing. Nothing happens without the knowledge of the top. Top. And I'm saying, is it an injustice? Either way you look at it, is it an injustice? Is the system rigged? That is the pension scheme within our system of governance, is it rigged so that we must sit and fold our hands and decide, this is how it is, and we must make noise? Here's the other thing. When lands are sold to foreigners at prices that, I remember a particular activist was making the comparison in terms of the price per square foot of land for foreigners for investment purposes, as opposed to the price per square foot of land for nationals here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When selling to foreigners, it would appear that they would have gotten a different price, lower, much lower than the price at which nationals would or could buy at, or were offered, so to speak. Because you say would or could buy, one wants to suggest or feel that foreigners come home, having worked so hard in the cold, they now come home with millions of dollars, and that, yes, let's squeeze the foreigners, squeeze the nationals as opposed to foreigners. Or is it that the system is rigged, where provisions are made for foreign direct investors? So when you hear FDI is being mentioned, that is what it means. Foreign direct investments or investors are given certain concessions. They're given certain little deals to allow them to invest in our country. And to what extent would that benefit us as nationals or the investors themselves? We must ask those questions. We want to know, is it an injustice that is being done to us nationals who want to buy a portion of land nearby some river or nearby, seawater coming down at a certain way? Is that an injustice when foreigners come in and are offered lands, let's say in the Barley area and close to the seashore, and we sell them at X amount of dollars, which is far lower than what we sell our nationals? Is it an injustice? And would we sell our nationals those portions of land close to the sea? Is it an injustice? 600 and something acres in the Barley area. Some, of course, is now cordoned off for FDIs, and our nationals, one or two of them wanted portions of land and they make noise, So I'm saying, is that an injustice, or is the system rigged? And who rigged it? Who rigged the system? Who rigged the system? Is it somewhere hidden in our law? And if so, can we change or repeal or amend that particular act, if at all? Yes, Mrs. Hogg, it says, no intelligent person would agree for their government or leaders to take and use their savings or pensions and use it willy-nilly. So that is why I'm asking the question, is this system rigged? Because listen, I can hold a pen, could hold a pen and write. You could read. Somebody else may not be able to read, but you could read, give them. We are all intelligent at different levels. Some go to school, some sit down in front, some sit down behind the class, behind the back of the class, rolling up paper and throwing at one another. But nonetheless, we are intelligent enough to understand when something goes wrong. Okay, very intelligent. Yes, Mr. Myers, thank you for joining. And the other thing you say, you would like to think that a different entity would be responsible for such monies, not the government. If the government is in charge of such funds, that is cause for corruption. Well, let me take off my glasses for this. Because I think that was the point that was being made some months ago when it was found out. It appears so that, let's take for example, there are some golden years centers that were promised. And when we do check, it would appear that monies taken from the National Insurance Scheme were used to finance. I'm saying it appears so. That is how the correlation looked on paper. But was it so? I don't know. You tell me. Was it so? And if it is so, we're supposed to be intelligent people. Board members. Well, I don't want to tell the board members, Those board members are competent. You have former bankers. You have, persons of good intellect who we put our trust in. So we are intelligent persons here. What happened to Vincentians, is that we just take a lot of blows. And the other thing what we do is we just turn a blind eye to some things. And I'm saying to us as a people, it is time for us to wake up. Those who have not been, sometimes you're sleeping and you're not quite sleeping, you're sleeping with one eye open. It is about time for us to face the facts and think clearly, for those who are not thinking clearly as yet, that we are on a path towards the future that we ourselves are creating today. How I am going to spend my days, the rest of my days, I'm already preparing just by what I'm doing, talking to us, and you're already preparing how you're going to spend tomorrow. And no government officer, no ministry will be around to take care of me if I end up in diapers. So I have to make the preparation today, put away $20 every month. And the value of that $20 in 5 years, of course, will be less than it is now by virtue of inflation and so on. And how the whole thing runs. The world is changing. So we are intelligent enough to know that we must focus on these issues. These are what? Bread and butter issues. You say you would think that, Mrs. Hodge, that a different entity would be responsible for such monies. Here's the thing. Small island developing states, from what I have researched and what others have researched and from what we have all discussed, is that in small island developing states like ours, even if you put a board, you appoint a board to sort of steer the direction, give a strategic direction, you allow board members but only up to a certain level, only up to a certain, you know, cut-off point. And some ministers, I know this for a fact, would pick up a phone and call. Hey Doris, how you doing? Look, you normally collect monies for the building of those transformers. I'm using a fictitious kind of thing, but the principle is the same. And the particular minister and you are good friends, they know that you voted for them because as a civil servant, you didn't jump up and go on the platform per se, but rather you went and you shake his or her hand, and eventually they say, hey, we will appoint Doris to head the department that deals with the construction of transformers, 220 watts transformers. When that minister wants a little favor, he or she picks up the phone. Hey Doris, how much money I'll make this month? And because I'm able to either do the accounts for myself, little bookkeeping now, more than bookkeeping, I'm able to keep a record as to how much monies that my particular company or department or organization or association made, that the particular minister would call asking for not a loan, but some of the monies that I would have collected. And they may state that they are in a jam. What? And because I recognize that the particular minister would have caused my appointment to the particular entity, if I am weak, so weak that I am fearful that my job could be taken away from me, the ripple effect is that I did buy a big boat, I'm still paying off for the boat. I also had some craft items that I invested in, and you name it, I have other things happening. You may find that it would be difficult for me to say no to the minister or representative. And I would, if you want $5, $6, $8, $10 million from the proceeds of, my undertaking or the undertaking where I have oversight on a day-to-day basis, guess what will happen? I will just say, all right, minister, send over, I'll make a check out for 10 million. And let me tell you something. That's why you see things like transparency and accountability. Those are values that can be found within the National Liberation Movement on our proposal. And we intend to keep all of those things, the values and so on that transcends us. When a minister would find himself or herself wanting X amount of dollars from an entity that he is unprepared to sign for, the final authorizing officer for that particular initiative or entity is not the minister. And you may find a big cuss out. The cuss out may go like this. Do you know who I am? Obviously, I would have to say, if I'm not weak and I can stand up to that minister, I would say, yes, I know who you are, minister. You're the minister for Grassroots Limited. You're the minister for, telephone and subsidies. And I would say to that minister, once you put it in writing, minister, that's okay. You know the reason why the minister may not want to put it in writing is because when a forensic audit is being done, and a forensic audit is not the ordinary audit, I am told, by the experts. Me no expert in a forensic audit. But we have access to those who are forensic auditors, and they would find how the money shift and move in every which way. You could hide all you want to hide. The day we find ministers of government moving and shifting monies around and not being able to give an account of their stewardship while they are in office, that'll be another story. All right, so what you're saying is that we need to stop turning a blind eye to what is truly going on. It seems that there is only one person steering the ship called St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and no one else have any input. Am I correct in thinking so? You know, Mrs. Hodge, you just put me in a jam, you know, just really put me in a jam. Every Monday morning, you know, you may see a particular minister or representative at a news conference or on the radio. And that particular minister may have set himself up. Yeah, because even in the days of Moses, who was supposed to be this great leader of God's people, his father-in-law was Jethro. And what did Jethro tell him? Say, Moses, if you continue like this, you're going to kill yourself in the process. You have to delegate. So Moses, I always go back to the Bible for some very guided information. So Moses told, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, said, look, divide up the camp. You're going to have some in 50s, some in 100, then divide that further. And then you're going to have some in 10s and so on. And eventually, it ain't God who come down and tell Moses that, you know, and Moses was a man who was loved by God. You understand me? The point is that you have to use a common sense approach towards the administration of a country. You say it seems to you that there is only one person steering the ship called SVG. Some people may share your similar sentiments. But I want to say that no one man or woman can manage an entire island. The person may be visible. The person may be in the news all the time. So that, let us take, for example, the Ministry of Technology is supposed to have somebody. The Ministry of Digital Transformation is supposed to have a particular representative. There's a Ministry of Books. That ministry is supposed to have a particular representative. But what you find from time to time is that a particular individual who is the head of an organization may be of such that he overshadows. By what he doesn't say, he would sort of like take over center stage from everybody else. So that if a minister of books wants to publish a book and has a book launch, you wouldn't find or shouldn't find that this other minister who is at the top come and take away the limelight from the particular minister of books. And I'm just using those terminologies to help us to understand from a basic or a fundamental standpoint that no one person is qualified anywhere to lead or to steer a ship or to call themselves an encyclopedia and the rest who should follow. We call them what? Copybooks. Them small book with piece of pencil you used to put in your mouth and you feel 1 and 1 make 2 and so on. No. And the person who is at the top appear to have it all together. They may have gone to school, don't get me wrong, they may have gone to school, a different school other than those who they have had the opportunity to swell their ranks and to make a political movement or party. But that does not qualify them to steer a particular ship. Well, in this case, you say a ship called St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And then you say no one else have any input. Am I correct in so thinking? I don't think you're correct in thinking that there is only one person that is steering the ship in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or steering the administration here in St. Vincent. You may be correct on other fronts, but sitting within our civil service not too long ago, because I retired in 2018, retired from the civil service in 2018 and came home and did my own thing until a group of folks came to my house and asked me to be part of this political movement called the National Liberation Movement. The point I'm making is we sit around a table, each ministry, we are able to address all issues that came to us. We will go through budget call, budget presentations, we will write about stuff, but you have all of us officers who would have had the opportunity to input into a particular document. However, having said that, the minister at the top would finally, he would be the one to take up a document, having been produced by others. He takes up the document and he goes to the cabinet and he says, my government, X or Y. It's not his government. It's not our government. It's our government. We are the ones who contributed. It's our government. You hear me? Our government. What is hurting this nation is that a number of us are afraid to stand up. Somebody said to me the other day, Doris, if you were working with the administration still, would you have been able to see these things that you claim to be seeing and people coming to you and telling you these things? Would you have been able to stand up and say something? And I say, according to the CSO, that is the Civil Service Orders, no civil servant, not me or anyone else, could be found or should be found on a political platform anywhere, because we are bound by certain oaths of office. And I'll tell you why I appreciate the civil service so much. Of course, I was a teacher before and then transitioned to the civil service. I was transferred to the civil service and so on. The civil service is part of the political subsystem that keeps the machinery of governance turning over. So if something goes wrong in a particular department and the civil servant finds his or her way on the streets to say, look, Doris was the permanent secretary for this particular ministry, and therefore you know what happened? She not doing this right or she not doing that. First you have to sit down and talk with your team. So I was a junior officer, then I became a senior officer, then I became, you understand me? And in the diplomatic service, when we want anything, or we see anything, or we hear anything, we will report back to master control, meaning back to our ministry. The head of our ministry, the final authorizing officer for each ministry is the permanent secretary. And the permanent secretary is the person who say, okay, this is going or that is going, or this is not going. And why is that? It is for continuity that we have a civil service or a public service, yes, that is one that holds itself to the highest integrity of the land, should hold itself to the highest integrity of the land. You know, we're just scratching the surface and we can't go beyond the hour as we have, you know, that we really wanted to. But all heap of questions I have that people are giving me, and I am saying this thing with injustice is that particular quality that relates to unfairness. If the thing is done by a particular minister in the name of partisan politics and it is unfair, we must call it so. Call it a spade is a spade. If it is unfair, It is unfair. If it results in undeserved outcomes, Mrs. Hodge and others, we should say so. Too many times. And I'll tell you, as a mother, it sucks out. I saw something one of my children advertised recently, and I think it's a song was being sung. But sometimes you don't know the amount of pain that your mom would have gone through. And I'm not saying fathers don't go through stuff, but because there are some fathers who go through real hell, because their wives are unjust in the practices that, of course, undeserved outcomes, and those fathers would cry. The woman sometimes would take it in and just sit down and, as you would say, smoke their proverbial pipe and just bear the grinds. But when you're running, so to speak, you're running a government, the buck doesn't really stop with you as the prime minister of a particular country. You have to have a team with you. Otherwise, and I know that there are, there's slight in the constitutional provision that says that the particular minister who holds the office of prime minister of a small island developing state like ours, that they have, well, not supreme authority, but they have a wide span that within which they can maneuver. But we are saying, if that individual is not possessed with the Holy Spirit, if that individual doesn't understand his or her role, then they're in trouble. There's a portion of scripture that I love. It says, Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, He has shown you, O man, what is good. Man, in a sense, a generic term there, man and woman. And I'm not imputing anything into the scriptures, but I'm just saying, based on what I did at Bible school some years ago, He has shown you, O man, mankind, what is good and what does the Lord require of you. There's a question. The answer is to do or to act justly. Let's be just. Coming back to the point of injustice. And to love mercy. And to walk humbly with your God. And when you hear some stories, you realize that some of our ministers are, quite frankly, not walking according to the mandate that they are supposed to be walking. Yes, Mrs. Hart, why are there no Vincentian investors? Why are only Europeans given the best of our lands? For example, Canawan and Mairu and so on. Okay, so let's break that up. Why are there no Vincentian investors? As far as I know, there are some Vincentian investors. I picked up on some of them who invested in small hotels, small, well, you should say, like apartment buildings and so on. I have dealt with a few of them over the years, and they are given certain concessions so that they would invest in our island. And those concessions, of course, is from a legal standpoint, they're able to fill out these forms and they're saying, okay, they are going to be building this thing. Some of them I think are given, I don't want to quote out of sync, out of, I think like if you're doing more than 10 rooms, like a guest house, you are given certain concessions. And those will be different from, let's say, a foreign investor, foreign direct investor. Yes, sir. So there are some Vincentians, some local Vincentians. Why are only Europeans given the best of our lands? Well, that is quite quite a loaded question. I would want to say that, yes, there is a slow connection, so we are going in and out sometimes here. I wouldn't want to say that this is a very complex question, in the sense that it's not only Europeans that are given the best of our lands. You may have others. You may have Italians, you may have Asians, you may have Indians, you may have Africans, specifically Nigerians, and others who want to buy, as you say, the best of our lands. But we have got to review that policy that says we have a portion of law, a segment of the law which talks about alien land holding license. Just recently, we would have had some questions coming in to us asking whether or not foreigners can purchase houses. There was an entity who wanted to purchase houses and refurbish or repair and then sell them to his counterparts in other parts of the world. Is that permissible? Is that permitted? Sorry. The necessary questions must be asked, because there is a fee, and we are looking for monies from many quarters. But what is quite interesting is that we are allowing a number of non-nationals to come through to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and be given what is known as the better part or the best part of what we as Vincentians should hold and hold there. This thing about sovereignty is at stake when we sell lands. The lands here were fought for by the Kalinago and the Garifuna and the Caribs and the Africans. This is our land. There's a big word I learned the other day about gentrification, where persons would come in, non-nationals, they would buy up all these lands and houses. They get money from different sources, of course, and they would force our nationals to leave. And then you have what is known as garrison communities being built in that way. Of course, you have other types of garrison communities where the nationals can't go in. But this is our land, and it's about time for us as Vincentians to wake up to the realization that we too have a say in the internal governance of us as a people, and that we too can come together and decide we are going to have 3 or 4 of us coming together to buy or to build a hotel in a particular place and to reap the benefits similar to others who would come in here and do the same thing. Is it an injustice to remain silent when we see our church members, our family members suffer in the name of partisan politics? Is it? Because someone didn't vote for a certain party and they are in need, and they go and ask for pipe-borne water, or they ask for something. And by the way, let us remember that all the resources of our country belong to us as a people, irrespective of which party you voted for. And those are some of the issues that were handled at a particular conference, the Barbados conference in 2023, where our representative, which is Renee Batiste, would have attended in June 2023. At our meeting tonight in Dubois, I am going to be reading something about the limit that was advocated, well, not advocated, but they were noting Cayman Islands, Guyana, and Belize. They were noting that those countries would have placed a limit on the term limit on the office of the Prime Minister. You know, we're advocating for that, of course. But I say all of that to say, when things are hurting us, we must say, we must stop pretending we are hurting, and we must say what it is that's hurting us without being disrespectful, without being rude. If somebody mashing your foot, you say, please, sir, you're mashing my foot. Can you take your foot off of my foot, please, sir, please, sir? And if they are not doing that, you cry out and you ask a neighbor to assist you, and so on. Okay, so you say you believe that it is happening in other islands and countries, and their citizens lose their rights to use their beaches and so on. There is an instance down in Canouan. Canouan is part of my ancestry as well. I learned that recently. But not only that, we have Vincentians, whether mainland St. Vincent or the Grenadines. And some sort of story went down where a leasehold, in other words, you have a lease on a property, you should be able to sell that. So a property that you could sell is freehold property. But there is a convoluted version of leasehold and the freehold that is now or has made its way into Parliament. And there is this, I don't want to call it a lacuna. A lacuna is a little hole in the law. But a convoluted version, according to the law of property, a leasehold remains a leasehold and a freehold remains a freehold. To me, that is basic. But you have now that we lease the property in Canouan and we turn around and we give them permission to sell the leasehold as if it was freehold. That's my understanding of that. And that has to be looked at again. Under an NLM administration, it has to be reviewed, because you can't have people coming in to buy the lands that were supposed to be owned by our ancestors, that were passed down legally or conveyed to grandchildren and great-grandchildren for their use. And in the interest of so-called development, you come in and one minister of government, that is Sir James Mitchell, went ahead and claimed to have had a consultation with the residents of Canouan and decide that this is the way the sale of the land should go. And that issue was further compounded by our current minister, our current Prime Minister, Honorable Ralph Gonsalves. And somehow that whole convoluted version is what is happening today and what resulted in the damage to, what's her name, Deborah Snag, who is a relative of mine, and others, Kerry Bino, who is also a relative of mine, and all of them in Canouan were saying, this is a state of injustice. Some settlement sort of came about where the minister, our current Prime Minister, went down when Deborah started to say, well, no, access to the beach should not be denied and all of that. The next thing you know is some sort of adjustments were made, but it is not to be taken as the end all and be all of that situation. St. Vincent and the Grenadines belong to us. We can lease, we can sell, we can borrow, We can beg, we can buy. Whatever we do must be in accordance with the law of our country. The Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines should be upheld. It is the supreme law of this land. And all I am saying is that it's about time for us as Vincentians to look carefully as to what will be our legacy and what it is that has been conveyed to us as nationals, and to see where we are in the scheme of things. If there are things that should be put right, we will put it right, because it is unfair and an injustice to us if things are not done in order to promote us and our livelihoods in the best possible way. We have children and grandchildren, and we have a country to build. If you don't have any other thing else to add, then within the next 2 minutes, I will have to wrap up. I'm going to leave you with saying this. Do we believe when others say the things that I have shared with us? Do we believe them? And to what extent do we believe them? And is there evidence to support such tales that, when I say tales, but such stories that are reported to us? All right then, so thank you very much. And I take this opportunity to invite you to Dubois tonight, where we're supposed to be having another in a series of political meetings from the National Liberation Movement of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm Doris Charles, wishing you all the very best. Goodbye.